Well, this is episode 1 of We Are Human in New York. I'm here with Tommy Truong. And aside from the fact that we both share the same birthday, we're both very heavy on planning. We're both planners. So my first question to you is, when you guys had the lockdown, being forced to slow down and kind of reconnect with yourself, can you talk to me about that process and what that was like for you?
Yeah, well, first, welcome to New York. I'm so glad to be your first New York episode.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was really difficult, I guess. Like, I've always been so hyperactive and, neurotic. I think my brain, just works that way. And so it was hard. I think it's, the idea of, trying to be productive when, the whole concept of productivity is, flipped on its head, what do you do to be productive? The best thing you could do is stay inside and do nothing, right? Which is hard for me because I'm prone to being hyperactive. And I think that also is just the other side of that was everything that I had planned to do. 2020 was a really big year for me in particular, just because it was my graduation year. I was planning this whole graduation trip, and it was the transition of me not only graduating, but the first year of my life where I wasn't in school anymore, because I went straight from my undergrad into my grad program. Right. And I knew that I was after my grad school I'm done. I'm not doing any more school. So it was big for me. I had a lot of plans, and I think that having COVID kick that off was obviously just hard to deal with. And I think that I just really had to learn to not plan and just be in the present as much as possible, because it was so hard, especially with the nature of the virus at the time. We didn't know how long we were going to be in lockdown for. And so I had to start just being okay, day to day, what is going to make me happy, and what is going to keep me sane. So and that was my focus.
What were those things that were able to keep you sane during that?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. So I was home in Orlando, which was awful for me, because every single time I'm in Orlando, I just feel so unproductive. And I feel speaking of New York, I just feel there's a sense of individualism here. You can be on your own, and it's okay, and it's encouraged. And there's so much to do and to keep yourself occupied here, by yourself. And I feel in Orlando it's not like that at all. It's I live in in the middle of suburbia, and so I just had to find things that I had to go back to my basics, which is for me was yoga for sure, staying active, and then really just reaching out to the support group I have in Orlando, which is really why I value Orlando, and I going back there now is just I have some of my closest friends live there, and my parents obviously. So I was grateful to not be in New York during COVID, because it was a really iffy time for me mentally, and it was crucial for me to be around those relationships that helped support me and that I could lean on.
Yeah, so you were able to kind of rediscover that appreciation and love for Orlando, because you mentioned you can't stand it being over there. So going back, you were able to kind of reconnect with those friends and realize these are the people that are really elevating me.
Yeah, it made me realize I've always been let's get out of here, and because I always knew that I wanted to be in New York City or a bigger city or doing something else. But it helped me just remind myself how grounding it is to be in Orlando, or a place like Orlando that's just slower paced, mm-hmm. and so much community around me. And I've over the past couple of years really grown to Orlando a lot more than I used to. And now I catch myself going to go back, not to live, but just visit and stuff. Yeah,
to visit. You need those moments to kind of take a break and slow down, as
Totally.
You mentioned, for a bit. And going back, you mentioned yoga was some of the thing, was one of the things that kind of brought you back into your foundation and reconnecting
mm-hmm.
with yourself. When did you start getting into yoga and all of that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel I during the time was okay, well, what were the things in the past that have really grounded me? And I think that yoga's always been that thing for me. And I it's always weird, because in times of my life where I feel off center, it's always because I'm not within my yoga practice. And I think that that's how foundational it's been for me over the past I don't know 6 or 7 years now. So I started in I don't know, undergrad freshman year. So, oops, that's our sushi probably.
There we go.
We have to take a quick commercial break.
So going back into yoga. You started yoga 7 years ago. So what was like the motivation behind that?
Let me think back. What like, I can't even remember. I think I've always been. Okay, actually no, I know the exact moment. So when I was in India, I was traveling with a friend that was like really into yoga, and she would like, she wasn't teaching at the time, and eventually she became a yoga instructor, but she would like lead us like in like little practices in the morning and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, when I get back to the States and back to school at UF, I want to start like taking yoga classes. And then I did, and then I just like became hooked, and like I was like really good friends with like I became like really good friends with the yoga instructor that I used to go to his classes all the time, and we just like were so close. And so like it was a thing where I'm like, oh, I get to see my friend like every single week, and I also get to like practice. And also just like got me so much more like into my body, and like I hadn't really been like into like working out or like cared any like, or I don't know, just like body conscious, like not like conscious.
Were you like were you, I guess, ever comfortable with your body before, or was this like a big step forward into that?
Honestly, it's such a good question, because I don't even like think back about it very often, but I think I like that's what really started making me like way more comfortable with my body, and like way more connected to it on like not just like this like superficial like physical sense, but like just like this like internal connection to my body, you know?
Wow, that's remarkable.
Yeah, and so I started like going to classes just like every single week, and it was like free because I was just going at the gym at my school. And so I was like, there's no reason not to, and I just got like really hooked, and I started teaching like a couple years after.
Wow. So like how long were you teaching for also?
So let's see, another math equation. So I stopped teaching this year because of COVID, but I was teaching in between all of this. What was that, like maybe like 4 or 5 years I've been teaching.
Wow. Your trip to India was one of your first flight out of the country.
Yeah.
Which I admire that and commend you, because that's courage. And also like it was your first study abroad trip, correct? Yeah.
It was my first time out of the country. My first time traveling alone anywhere. It's funny because like I get so much anxiety now, because what happened when I was at MCO, I left my phone. This is like, I was like, oh my God, so anxious about traveling by myself and like leaving the country. I was like, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do? Like, am I gonna be able to make my transfers and stuff? When I was at security, I left my phone at security, took the, you know how like MCO works. I took the terminal to my gate, got to my gate, and realized I didn't have my phone.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I'm fucked. Like, I'm not gonna make it through. So I had to go back, and thankfully like they had my phone, and like I had enough time to make it to my flight still, but like, it started off bad. Like I was like, I'm not gonna be able to make it. Yeah. But yeah, India was definitely such a culture shock. I think it's like to this day like the best decision I've ever made, though.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's just like taught me so much about not only like what I wanted to do for like my career, because I was like interning while I was there, but also just like gave me so much of a desire to like seek more perspective and like be out in the world and like learn more about other people and like other cultures, and just like beyond my little bubble that I was in. So yeah, I think it was like, to this day I will credit India as like one of the trips that really changed my life.
That's amazing. I usually try to tell people, like my youngest brother, he's going through his adolescence period, right? So yeah, anytime we go anywhere, he's like, I don't want to go there. We went to Utah recently, and he's like, hiking, I don't want to do hiking. And I'm like, bro, you gotta like go out and venture out, because you never know what you're gonna find, or what you're gonna learn about yourself, or what you're gonna learn about like, you know, the area that you're in.
Totally.
And I think it's important for people to be able to experience that for themselves. The most like mind-blowing trip that I've taken is, I've been to Kenya, and just being able to see like the kids over there like exert joy despite their circumstances is already like, you know, like a culture shock too. You know?
That's like that. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was like one of my like main things too, because like I thought like I was gonna go in and like, obviously like we were like working for this nonprofit and like doing this like mission-based like work, and like we were coming there with like certain resources and whatever, and like as Westerners I think there's like this whole concept of like this like Western savior, and like right. Like for me, like I thought I was gonna go there and be like, oh my gosh, I'm like so sad for these kids that live in these like rural villages and like have like, you know, so much less access to a bunch of resources I had. But like honestly, they were like so happy and like so just like living life to the fullest, and like just like we're the best people,
Yeah.
and just like so, I don't know, just like present in their lives. And I was just like, I have no reason to feel bad for these people. Like they don't need my pity, and like I have like so much to learn from like this experience and like the way that they live their lives. Like it's just because like we are used to a standard of like resources and privilege here in the United States or like in the Western world doesn't mean that like people without it are like any less dignified or like need those things from us to like live better lives. And so I think that was like one of like the really main kind of takeaways from that trip was just like people can be happy with so little.
Yeah.
And I think that like as you have more and more, it actually becomes like more difficult to be happy.
No, absolutely. I mean, it goes into the whole thing of like, you know, money can't buy happiness, right? Like you can make whatever amount of money and you could be very easily dissatisfied. I think humans are usually dissatisfied, period. And that could be like a Western thing because of the standards that we have and the resources that we have. Like this concept of like, you're never going to be happy, period. But I mean, I find that to be still inaccurate or incorrect though, because like there's a way to have access to that inner peace and that inner joy, like, you know, by practicing mindfulness and doing that every day, because you have to do it every day. We get sidetracked with life and everything, so it gets difficult and we have setbacks, but like it's very accessible also.
So much of it is just like this idea of the American dream, like, you know, like work hard and you're gonna get what you want, but like that's just like not how things work like in real life. It's just like some things are just like never, you can work as hard as you want, you're just like never gonna, I don't know, like it's just like you have to not be like working for your happiness, you just have to like have it, you know, like it just has to be something that like regardless of your circumstances or situation, which is like something I've been trying to tell myself, like, oh, like once I have this job I'll be happy, or once I'm making like X amount of money, or once I'm in this apartment I'll like be happy, you know, like, or be able to tell myself
that's also
to be
like
happy.
Putting an expectation on something,
exactly,
you know?
I'm just like I have the ability and like have like the responsibility to like choose to be happy in my current circumstances, like despite how I view them, you know, like despite like I don't want to be in my current job right now and I'm trying to leave. Oh my gosh, like that doesn't mean that I can't be happy, you know, like I'm just like, just because I like, and that's like something that I've like really had to think about. It's just like sometimes I feel myself by like being so discontent with my current situation that I like push myself into something that I think is like better or like greater. Like I think that's like how my mindset has been like forever. Like I'm like, oh, I'm unhappy with like, even like in school, like I'm unhappy with my grades or whatever, so I'm gonna make myself feel so bad about that like it's gonna push me to work harder, and which has like worked for me so much of like my life. And so I've like been like, it's been like a positive reinforcement, because I've been like, oh, like this way of stressing myself out and making myself feel like unhappy about my current situation pushes me to work harder to do better. But like now I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, that's not healthy for me,
right?
And it's getting harder and harder to like cope, because it's like giving me like anxiety. And like when I was like growing up, I never had anxiety, like ever, and it's like anxiety is like a very new experience for me. And like I was always, when like I had seen people like experiencing it or I had friends, I've always been able to like not relate. I've been like, I don't know like what you're talking about, like you're like, you need to deal with it. But then like once I like started to experience it, I was just like, wow, this is something that I've never dealt with before. And it's like this whole new just like perspective on the way you have to like treat yourself and like prioritize your mental health.
That's probably the added perspectives that you are continuing to seek out.
Exactly.
You know? But I mean, but that's also like a beautiful thing, because like I connect that with like always seeking like knowledge, like being on this earth for however much like that we have on it, like being able to learn as much as you can through different experiences and then being able to like apply that within your own journey. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's just what is given to us, like in a very weird way. Like it sounds kind of, I don't know, maybe it sounds a little messed up, but like we kind of get placed in these situations for us to learn something from it.
Totally.
And then be able to like pass that on. I saw something that like, I mean, I love Pharrell, like I'm a big Pharrell fan, and he's always talking about like share the codes, which is like, you know, if you know how something works or how something can get done, like why would you keep that information to yourself? Like always pass it forward and and be able to share that with people so that they can continue to learn and then continue to pay that forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the greatest things that we can do here, and like one of the greatest gifts too.
Totally. I'm like always like, that's my perspective. Like usually when I am like, I have somebody in my life, I'm just like, I think everyone who like comes into my life is here for a reason. And I think like I'm very like everything happens for a reason kind of person. Not like everything happens for a reason, but there's a reason for everything happening.
Right.
Like, so like you can seek out the reason that like whatever it was happened to you or like came into your life. And I think that that's the thing about people to me that come into my life or like come like are exiting my life. I'm always like, there's like a reason or something else I meant to learn from this person. And I think that that's been like the most valuable perspective to have on like my relationships and friendships. I've always been like, okay, like even if this ended terribly, like thank you for teaching me this, and I'm going to like keep that with me, and like that's going to be your like impact on my life, and like vice versa.
Yeah, I mean that could be an ego check sometimes, but it's definitely necessary. And even like tying that back in with yoga, like you having that experience all the way back in India, and then think about like the groups of people that you've impacted by sharing that knowledge and doing those classes with them, like when you were doing like being an instructor, basically, you know, they probably take that and been able to like apply it in their own growth. And
I think totally, like everything's like a stepping stone, like through yoga, like it's like everything's like a catalyst to the next thing. Like my friend in India like inspired me to do yoga, and so I started doing yoga. And like when I was in school, I decided to like do my like, yoga teacher program, and then I met like some of my best friends that like I still like talk to this day through that program. And like I think that just like that decision has like, how small it may seem to like go to my first yoga class, has been like so, or like as cheesy as it sounds, like so like crucial to like the trajectory of how my life went like after that,
literally,
which is like I guess like a little insane to think about. But I don't know, I think that's like one of the things I'm most grateful for is like the relationships that I've made by like deciding to do certain things, and like the people that I've met that are like interested in the same things or like have a similar like mindset that I do.
Yeah, that's important, because that's the only way that you're going to continue to grow along those people as well. Yeah, like if you have like toxic people in your life, then typically it sucks to say, but you might have to remove yourself from those situations. And like that's a rabbit hole of its own, like with toxic family members or friends that have been very close to you, but you've been able to pick out their toxic traits that are not being worked on and it's not your responsibility to fix them, you know? So it can always get very tricky, but being mindful and always surrounding yourself with the people that you know that are continuing to elevate you, like that's always like the key, I think, with life, with your trajectory. I think
maybe this is like the areas in me speaking, I don't know if you feel this way too, but I've like always been very quick to cut people out of my life like that I feel like are toxic. Opposite, really. I've been like, oh my gosh, like I remember with my ex, like the last conversation I had with him, I was like, this is the last time I'm ever speaking to you. And it was literally the last time I've ever spoken to him. And so I'm just like, I've been that person like my whole entire life. Like if I feel like someone's toxic for me, like I have no problem like cutting them out of my life like forever. Like I remember one of my friends, actually I don't want to say this, but well, I'll tell you. One of my friends in high school, like I was friends with him for like 6 years, and he just started to become like really toxic to me, and I like never spoke to him again. Like I just like never spoke to him again. Damn, and so like that's like I feel like I need to learn the opposite lesson almost. Like I need to like give people more grace and like learn to, which I've been trying to
like
do.
Advocate for yourself in a respectful way, but without having to do like the ghosting or like
like
because
just like
you don't have a responsibility to anyone. So technically, like, is ghosting like something that is understandable, or what's the word, like is it accepted, like you know, or acceptable? Yes and no. I feel like it's always like there's a lot of blurred lines with that, but like there is a way to kind of do it a bit more like less harsh.
No, for sure. And I think that like that's like a lesson that I'm still learning, is like just like being, even like on the other side of it, like being open to meeting people and like not like judging a book by its cover. And like I think I've always been very critical of other people, just because I think it just stems from me being very critical of myself and like holding myself up to high standards. And like I'm like, the people I'm around are like a reflection of me, and so like even my friends and stuff, like I hold them to a very high standard because like I'm so overly critical of myself. And so how could I not be just like having a critical lens? But I think that's been not always the healthiest choice, obviously.
Yeah. So how are you working towards giving yourself a little bit more grace?
I think that's a good question, and like literally like what I've been thinking about over the past couple of weeks, honestly. Just like how do I, just like with this thing of like how I want to like get a new job, and like I want to be like making more money, or I want to be living in a certain lifestyle, and I'm like, I'm 25, I should be like, well, you know, like having these expectations for myself. And I think that like I've just been focusing on like the day to day, like how do I be like, what's gonna make me happy today? And like that's like what we were talking about like before we started recording. It's just like I try to not like talk like about my job. Like I'm like, I don't want to talk about that anymore because it's something that's bringing me like anxiety and like discomfort, and so I'll just work on it on my own and not like bring it into like my conversations and have it at the forefront of my mind because it's making me unhappy.
Yeah.
And like why am I also then bringing that to my friends and like these conversations that should be like a reprieve from work, and I'm just like making these conversations like toxic for myself. So I think it's just like, for me, it's been like on a more like granular scale that I've been able to deal with it. It's just like, let me focus on like conversations that make me happy, doing things that make me happy, like day to day, like how am I gonna get to like today, like feeling like I've done a good job at being happy today.
Yeah, no, there's something that I read in a book that was like, you know, it's relatable for me, probably for you too, like because we're planners, like, you know, having your to-do list and being okay when you don't have like a routine for the day, like if you get out of your routine or break your routine. And then also like at the end of the day, kind of like going through with like double checking like what you were able to kind of like accomplish, or like what felt good about today, you know,
and like celebrating the small accomplishments.
Exactly. Yeah,
for sure. That's been a big thing for me. I'm just like, okay, like I'm happy that I woke up today and like did a 30-minute workout, and I'm happy that I, you know, like did the bare minimum, that thing that I was supposed to do at work, and like didn't complain about it. And I'm happy that I cooked dinner or something, like, you know, like I don't know, it's been like, for me, just focusing on like the day to day and just like not about the big picture of like, I feel like there's like this like place that I'm supposed to be when I'm 25, or like when I'm like approaching my 30s, like I should be, you know, having these expectations for myself, when in reality, like the world has changed so much even over the past year. Like how could anyone expect anything for themselves in the next 5 years? Literally.
And then with any of those expectations is just gonna come disappointment.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing. Like I'm like a New Year's resolutions person, and so like for this upcoming year in 2021, I was like, okay, my resolution for this year is to go into it with like not having any expectation for this year. Like I just want to like be, and like not have to create these like goals for myself, and not like feel like I need to like bounce back from last year, or like, you know, like make up for how unproductive I was last year, you
right,
know,
that's
like
a big thing.
Yeah. And that's like a true anxiety for me. I was just like, I remember like during like the days where we spent at home, like I was like interning still, but I was only working like maybe like 2 or 3 hours a day, and I was like, what do I do with all of my time? Like I felt like not productive, but also like I wasn't allowing myself to rest or like use that as like a reset, because I was anxious about being not productive. And so it's like this middle ground of like, you're not doing anything that's productive, but you're also not even getting the chance to rest or like be still, because you're like thinking about how unproductive you are. And that's always been like the mindset I've had. And so like I had to teach myself to be like, okay, calm down. And like if today's a rest day, then today's a rest day. Like if today I'm deciding to be in bed and that's what I'm doing, then that's okay. And like I have to allow myself to do that.
When I don't have anything to do, I'm just like, what's going on? Yeah, you kind of just feel out of the funk. So like when retirement comes around and you're able to just kind of like sit back and rest and go to wherever you want to go, whether it's back to India if you can, Australia, anywhere else in the world, you know, like, and do nothing but be, you know, like, does that kind of like create some like anticipation or anxiousness?
I'm hoping like by the time that I retire, I'll be like a much more evolved person.
Yeah,
so I'll be able to chillax. And like I don't know, when I'm older, I just want to be like happy. And I think I see like that's what like inspires me so much, is like seeing older people in my life that are just like so full of life and like happiness. I think that's like so inspiring to me, because I think that like as a society, like we're taught that like the older you get, like the more like the less life your life has, like you're like, I don't know, like less like youthful, I guess is the only word I guess you can describe it as. But I'm like looking forward to like getting closer and closer to like my authentic like self and like lifestyle. And I think that like I'm so like anti-work, like I don't think anyone should have to work, and like which is like weird because I'm like so like such a workaholic, but like I think that's just like something that like capitalism and society has ingrained in all of us to like work harder and like keep working and like work harder than the people around you, then you'll get to like you'll be happier,
you'll have more benefits and more rewards,
you'll be more
and
successful, like whatever that means. But like I'm trying to like rewire myself currently and being like, okay, like work smarter and like play the game, but also like don't sacrifice like your life for it, because like my life is not work. Like I don't live for my job, I don't live to do what I like to like clock into my 9 to 5. Like I live for like my life, and like at the end of the day, like what am I gonna look back at and like be happy that I experienced, you know? I think I just have to like grow to a place where I'm able to enjoy life more, which I think every year I've been able to get closer to that. Yeah.
When I told you earlier before we started recording, like quitting my job and then kind of having nothing to really do, rolling the dice on just like I'm moving and like we'll see what happens when I get there, as long as I have a place to stay, which I do. And it's been very bizarre because like I want to work, but at the same time I've also been able to have like a glimpse of like life without a job. And I mean, obviously you cannot really survive for that long that way unless you have like some kind of passive income. So yes, of course you need money and you need to have a job or at least something to be able to sustain yourself. But at the same time, I've been able to kind of realize like, okay, yeah, like really like work isn't everything at all. Like I was at the same news station for 6 years, and within news they have like this, like, you know, this saying like it's breaking news, you know, like news doesn't stop, it's 24/7, you know, like you need to be on call. Like what kind of life is that, you know? No. And so just being able to kind of take a step back and breathe for a second, which is unnatural to me because I'm not used to it, but I'm happy to just do what I'm doing now, like with this podcast and just trying to find a few gigs here. And who knows if we're even here tomorrow. So like, you know, I'm just doing what I enjoy doing and what I love and am passionate about, and being able to like talk to different people, you know, and learn from those experiences too. Yeah. And just be more present and be more happy, you know, within what I'm doing. Yeah.
And then like another thing that I've like thought about, or like I think maybe like I've heard it somewhere, someone say it or something, or read it in an article, but like I think that this like I think it's so great if you like if someone loves their job, like good for you, like that's amazing. But I think that like as children we were like taught to like, oh, like find a job that you love, like, you know, or like find your passion, do what you love, and which is like a good idea, but I think that it's honestly like so toxic. Like you don't need to love your job, like your job doesn't need to be like the focal point of your life. Like right. I think like finding I think it's important to enjoy your job and like your job and like just like, you know, do it for what it's worth, but I don't think that everyone has to have a job they love. Like some people don't live to work. I think it's like so toxic that we like expect, you know, as kids to like, oh, let me find, like my main thing to do is find a job that I love to do. Like I think you should love your life. And I think that
love yourself.
Yeah, love yourself, love your life. Like you can like your job and hopefully it doesn't bring you any like added stress or pain. But I think that like work inevitably is going to be like just like tedious and whatever. It's just going to be like, not everyone has to love their job. Like you can just like do it, and that's the thing that you do to like, then you're able to live your life outside of work. And so that's something I've been
to have an identity outside of your job. Exactly. Because a lot of people can make their job their identity.
For sure. And like that's like the thing about loving your job is like it becomes like your focal point of your identity. And like I for me at least, I am not interested in that. And so like I've been like, I like love what I do to a sense, but I think that I was like getting anxiety, especially when I was like graduating. I'm like, okay, did I make the right choice? Like, is this the right career path for me? Do I love this? Like, is this what I love to do? And I'm like, what if it's not what I love to do? I'm like, who cares? Like, it's like what I chose to do now. I enjoy it. I think it's interesting. It's like something that I, you know, have interest in. And I think that that's like really solid. Like, I don't think that you have to like be this fully like invested, overly passionate about what you do. And I think it's great if people do have that, but I also think that kind of gets dangerous of like mixing your passion and work, because then you grow to be like, I don't know, resentful around something.
Yeah, that's why they say, you know, never try to like be so determined to monetize like anything that you create.
That you love, yeah.
You know, because
it's
then
like,
it's gonna become like a job, and then you're gonna end up hating
exactly,
it.
and just like work sucks in general. Like nobody wants to work. Like we just want to live our lives. I mean, maybe that's just like our generation too. Like I feel like the younger generations are like we're kind of like breaking down this like 9-to-5 structure and like going into an office. Like we can like work from home now, and like we can like we have remote work and we have like flexible hours and stuff like that. And like I'm hoping that like as like younger generations get into the workforce, that becomes more of the norm, because I think that like so much of our life is wasted with like just work.
Yeah.
And like unproductive work at that, like just sitting in an office. Like who actually works 9 to 5?
The 5 meetings that go
I know, like
on
I literally
during the
had
day.
Zoom calls like straight until you got here today. It was like back-to-back Zoom calls. Didn't get like a single thing done. I was just like in like very unproductive meetings.
Talking shit.
No, it's just like, why are we doing this? But I have to like, I'm team like play the game and like do what you need to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm just like, okay, let me like be here.
I like that team play the game.
Yeah.
Also, like side note, like I also think that people don't have to stick to something for the rest of their
100%.
lives. I mean, I understand with a lot of professions, like with doctors and stuff, but you know, for me that worked in like a news station, I don't need to do news for the rest of my life. Like,
yeah.
I have a degree in radio and television broadcast, but I can do other forms of media communications and
or anything,
do anything else.
Literally anything else. I think that's like, I learned this in undergrad when I remember like the exact moment I learned this, and like I realized this. it like lit a light bulb under like in my head. This like person came into our class, and like they were talking about like she was like an urban planner or something at the time, but then she was like talking about like literally like the like 7 careers that she had before this, and she was like 40 years old, maybe like 45, and I'm like, damn, like you can really just like do whatever the fuck you want to do, like whenever.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like I think that people get the reason why people that stresses them out is they feel like they're like
when they
wasting
try to pick
their
a
time.
major in college too.
Yeah, it's just like, who cares? Like literally who cares? Like it doesn't matter at all. Like I think people think that they're like wasting their time because like, oh, I already invested like this much time into being a doctor. Like I can't just like do something else. And I'm like, okay, you invest a lot of time, and now you're gonna waste the next decade of your life doing something you don't want to do because you're afraid of wasting like the 7 years that you put into being a doctor. Like that's really counterintuitive and not like there's like a logical fallacy. So I think that people are just like, oh, like I can't do this. I can't stop doing this because I already invested so much time in it. And I'm just like, I am like, everything's a stepping stone to your next thing. And like you're never wasting time. Like you're always like learning about yourself, learning about like what you want to do. And like honestly, in any job there's like transferable skills that you can bring to the next, and you can ways that you can market yourself to pivot career paths. And so that's something that I've been like so less stressed about now that I'm like older. It's just like I'm not worried about if I ever want to change careers, because if I want to, like I know that I'm going to be able to do it. But I also know that I'm like happy where I am, and I've like put a lot of thought into like what I want to do. And that brings me a lot of peace, because I think that sometimes I look at my like other like counterparts that are like my age or around my age group, and I'm like, oh, they're making like more money than I am, or like they are like more established in their career. But like so many people like literally hate their jobs and like hate going to work and like don't do something that they finding meaningful. And like that's for me like the substitute of like passion and like love. Like I want to do something that I feel like, at least if I don't love it, at least I feel like there's meaning behind it, and that I'm helping someone, and like there's like the output that I'm working for is something that's like a net positive for the world. And so I feel that way wholeheartedly about what I do, and that's what just like keeps me like sane.